Johnny. God bless the great state of Georgia. You know, Johnny and I have spent most of last month up in Washington, D.C. So it is great to be back in America. Thank you to Jack for hosting this. Thank you to everyone for coming out. You know, these are remarkable times in our nation's history. You know, just 3 weeks ago, a man was stopped after climbing the fence at the White House. Secret Service ran up to him. They said, "I'm sorry, Mr. President, you got 2 more years." Well, and I don't know if you saw it, actually, this past week, a second person was stopped climbing the fence at the White House. Secret Service ran up to them and said, "I'm sorry, Hillary, not yet." And not ever. Y'all are here today because our country's in crisis. The threats facing this nation have never been greater. We are at the edge of a cliff. Most common thing you hear as you travel the country is men and women, they grab you by the shoulder, they look you in the eyes and they say, "Listen, I'm scared. I'm scared for my kids, I'm scared for my grandkids. We are bankrupting this nation. And our constitutional liberties are under assault." Well, let me tell you, we are 10 days away from an election here in Georgia. We are 10 days away from a major battle to decide whether we're going to continue on the course we're on or whether we're going to change course. Now, there's a game that red state Democrats play. They come into states like Arkansas, like Louisiana, like Alaska, like North Carolina, like Georgia, and they say, "You know what? I'm not like those crazy Washington Democrats. I represent the values of this state." And let me tell you, every single time they say that, they're not telling you the truth. The modern Democratic Party in Washington, D.C. has become a radical and extreme party. So, in Georgia, this cycle, we've got Jimmy Carter and Sam Nunn on the ballot. You know, it's like that 70s show. Next thing you know, you're going to see John Travolta and Sideburns and disco coming back. Well, you know, we tried that once. We saw stagflation. We saw gas lines. We saw hostages in Iran. We saw what happens when America doesn't lead. And I'll tell you, in this election, President Obama was real honest. He said, Barack Obama is on the ballot in every race in the country. And Harry Reid is on the ballot in every race in the country. And we should be very, very clear. Michelle Nunn is Harry Reid. Because if she gets elected, the very first vote she'll cast is to keep Harry Reid as majority leader, shutting down the Senate and fighting against your rights and mine. This election's about 3 things: jobs, liberty, and security. When it comes to jobs, for 6 years we've been trapped in the great stagnation. The Obama economy, to put real simple, it didn't work. We had the lowest labor force participation since 1978. And what happens in the Harry Reid Senate? Nothing. You know, there are over 350 bills the House of Representatives has passed, most of them with bipartisan support. and they're all sitting on Harry Reid's desk, he will not allow a vote. So if you want to see tax reform, vote Harry Reid out. By the way, I'll tell you the simplest and best tax reform, we should abolish the IRS. We should move to a simple flat tax that is fair, that lets every American fill out his taxes on a postcard.
Fair tax.
And you know what? There are 110,000 IRS agents. We ought to padlock the building and take every one of those agents and put them on our southern border. Now look, I say that a little bit tongue-in-cheek. But think about it for a second. Imagine if you had traveled a long, arduous journey. You come through Central America, you come through Mexico, you cross the Rio Grande. First thing you see is 110,000 IRS agents. You turn around and go home too. And when you look at the economy, for 6 years we've seen the federal government wage a war on small businesses, wage a war on jobs. They have unleashed an army of regulators that have descended like locusts on small businesses. Only thing is, unlike the locusts, you can't use pesticides on the regulators. Although I said that once in West Texas, man in the back said, "Want to bet?" And I'll tell you the simplest and most important regulatory reform if we want to bring back jobs. We need to repeal every word of Obamacare. The second big thing this election is about is liberty. We have never seen an administration more hostile to the Bill of Rights, more hostile to our liberty than the Obama-Reid administration. It's almost like they're going down the Bill of Rights trying to violate each and every one of them. We've never seen an administration so hostile to the Second Amendment. Now, I know nobody here cares about the right to keep and bear arms. Look, Georgia are fundamentally good people, and one of the things is, in Georgia, like in Texas, we define gun control as hitting what you aim at. You look at the First Amendment. The radical Democrats in Washington are leading an assault on the First Amendment. You know, just a couple of months ago, we had a major victory for religious liberty in the Hobby Lobby case. Where the Supreme Court said the federal government can't force a Christian company to violate its religious faith under Obamacare. Now that decision was 5-4. One justice changes, and the Supreme Court says your religious liberty can be taken away. And by the way, it's going to be the Senate in charge of confirming any Supreme Court nominee. So the question is, do you want a Harry Reid Senate or do you want a Republican Senate? And I'll tell you, after Hobby Lobby, a very sad thing happened. Senate Democrats went to the floor and they introduced legislation to gut the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. Now, there was a time not too long ago that religious liberty was a bipartisan objective. That we might disagree over marginal tax rates, but when it came to religious liberty, we all stood together. In fact, when the Religious Freedom Restoration Act passed in the late 90s, it passed the Senate 97-3. Bill Clinton, the Democrats, signed it into office. Well, where are we today? Today in 2014, when Democrats introduced legislation to gut religious freedom, out of 55 Senate Democrats, you know how many stood up for religious liberty? 0.
Boo.
Every single Democrat. The Harry Reid Democrats voted to take away our religious liberty. I gave a speech on the Senate floor with a picture of John F. Kennedy next to me, and a quote that said, "I will not stand with someone who will not stand for religious liberty." I got to tell you, it scared my dad half to death seeing me on C-SPAN next to John F. Kennedy. He was like, "My goodness, Ted has gone native. He drank the water." But I'll tell you what I pleaded to the Senate. I said, where are the John F. Kennedys? When did the Democratic Party declare a war on religious liberty? When did the federal government begin imposing faith fines? And we've seen the culmination of it just last week in my hometown of Houston, where the city of Houston shamefully issued subpoenas to 5 pastors. Said, hand over your sermons to the city. Hand over your sermon notes. Now, I'll tell you, we organized a freedom rally at my home church in Houston, First Baptist. We had over 50 pastors there. They were from all across the city of Houston, all across denominations, all across racial lines, ethnic lines, socioeconomic lines, all standing together. There was so much unity. We actually had both First Baptist and Second Baptist there together. And that ain't easy. And I'll tell you what, we stood up and we said, we stand here united in defense of religious liberty. Caesar has no jurisdiction over the pulpit.
Amen.
And when you subpoena one pastor, you subpoena every pastor.
Amen.
Amen.
This race is about the fight for liberty. And the third thing this race is about is security. Look, for 6 years we've seen America recede from leadership in the world. And it's created a vacuum. It's made the world a much, much more dangerous place. You look at ISIS. ISIS is the face of evil. They are crucifying Christians. They are beheading children. Sadly, roughly 100 Americans have gone to join ISIS to take up arms, fighting jihad. You know, I introduced legislation to say that if any American goes and takes up arms against America and joins ISIS, that they lose their U.S. citizenship.
Yeah.
You want to know how radical and extreme the Democrats are? The Democrats stood up on the Senate floor and blocked that legislation. That's one of the things this race is about. Do you want Michelle Nunn to vote for Harry Reid and keep blocking legislation to protect this country? Or can we come together in a common sense way to protect Americans from those who would murder us? You look at the terrible scourge of Ebola that we've been dealing with in Texas and now in New York. 3 weeks ago, I sent a letter to the FAA asking, what steps are you taking to protect American citizens and to block commercial air travel from countries with active Ebola outbreaks? 3 weeks. The administration refused to respond. Hadn't answered. Now listen, this shouldn't be a partisan issue. We should come together as a basic common sense matter and say, when you've got an active outbreak, you want to isolate it and prevent it from coming here. We ought to protect American citizens. The other countries in Africa have done it. We need to do the same thing and protect our citizens. And when we talk about security, one vital security priority, we need to secure our borders. And we need to stop President Obama's amnesty. Now, I'll tell you, this summer I introduced legislation to make absolutely clear the president has no authority to unilaterally grant amnesty to millions of people who are here illegally. The House of Representatives took that legislation that I introduced, and the House of Representatives voted on it and passed it. Harry Reid in the Senate, out of 55 Senate Democrats, do you know how many Senate Democrats stood against Obama's illegal amnesty? 0. The president has promised to illegally grant amnesty. That decision makes this race a referendum on amnesty. Look, you've got real simple choices. If you want to bring back jobs and economic growth and opportunity, vote for David Perdue. If you want to repeal Obamacare, vote for David Perdue. If you want to stand for the Constitution, for the First Amendment, for the Second Amendment, for the Bill of Rights, vote for David Perdue. Now, there are a whole lot of national Democrats, a whole lot of liberal billionaires across the country who think Georgia's for sale. Michelle Nunn is telling folks, no, she's not with Harry Reid. Well, then why is he spending millions of dollars trying to elect her? Y'all are here for one simple reason. You understand Georgia is not for sale. And you want a senator who works for the citizens of Georgia and not for Harry Reid and Barack Obama and Mayor Michael Bloomberg. Now, we are all here together in unity. Today's the first day of in-person early voting. I want to ask each of you to do one simple thing. Go and vote for David Perdue 10 times. Now listen, I'm not suggesting voter fraud. We're not Democrats. But let me tell you how you can do that. You can go this afternoon down to the polls and cast a vote. And then you can go home and pick up the phone and call 9 other people. Call your sister, call your neighbor, call your coworker, call your son. And say, this election matters. This election matters. I'm scared for the future, for my kids, for my grandkids. I want them to have a brighter future than we have today. I want us to stop bankrupting this country. I want to get back to the constitutional liberties this country was built on. And if you get 9 people who wouldn't have otherwise voted to show up and vote, then every one of you will have voted 10 times for David Perdue and Nathan Deal, and Georgia will stay red, and we will turn this country around. That's what this fight is for, and y'all are leading the fight. You are leading the fight. It is all turnout. It's not about the TV ads. It's not about the money. It's not about anything else now. It's about each and every one of you delivering 10 people to the polls. And if we do that, if we stand together, we will turn this country around. We will pull back from the cliff. We will bring back together that shining city on a hill that is the United States of America. Thank you, and God bless you.
Don't sit down. Keep giving applause. Isn't that great? Ladies and gentlemen, again, I'm Ron Stevens. I chair the Economic Development Committee in the House of Representatives. I've served you now for 16 years. thank you again first, but I want to remind you of some quotes that you hear on the news a lot. And you've heard these. I wonder how many Democrats would stand up, raise their hand, and you remember the president said, these policies are on this election. Remember that? Ladies and gentlemen, I could get on and on. Remember 4 years ago, whenever we had the Barnes days, and we remember whenever this governor was making some promises. And isn't it nice to see a politician keep his word? I remember whenever he talked about Port Eagle. You want to see that done in his term. Ladies and gentlemen, we're about to start digging. And we put our money where our mouth is in our state budget. 300,000 jobs. There's one person to thank for that, as far as I'm concerned, and that's my leader, the head of my ticket, my governor. I can remember he made a promise. He said, I'd really like to try to move ourselves from the top 10 in this country to be the #1 state in the nation for business. I thought the man was crazy. So there's no way, as chairman of economic development, I knew the hurdles we had to move over. It was amazing. Now we have 3 agencies rating us #1 for business climate in this country, and there's one person to thank for that, and that's this governor. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm not going to take any more of this governor's time. I hope that you'll send him up here one more time for 4 more years for the very same prosperity that your grandchildren are going to be the recipient of. He's my friend. Ladies and gentlemen, your governor for the next 4 years, Nathan Deal.
Thank you, Ron. Thanks to my good friend Jack Kingston for this event again. I'm glad to have the opportunity to be with you. So many of you have been friends of mine, and I appreciate that. And I've appreciated your support during the 4 years you've allowed me to serve as your governor, and I ask you for your support for 4 more years. As you just heard, we have achieved something that we have never had in this state before, and that's the designation as the #1 state in the country in which to do business. And let me tell you what that brings to us. It brings to us a recognition that people say they've laid the right foundations for business to grow and for jobs to be created. And we're now at 300,000 plus new private sector jobs. One of the fastest growing states in terms of job growth of anywhere in the country. In fact, last year we were #6 in the nation in terms of total jobs. And almost all of those that were ahead of us were 2 to 3 times larger in population than Georgia. And we have had announcements, even within the last 10 days, of about 1,150 new jobs that are coming to Georgia. And we've got another one of 650 that's going to be announced on Monday. So we are a growing state. Speaking of growing, when I took office, we were the 10th largest population state. We're now the 8th largest population state. People are coming to Georgia. And the reason they're coming is because they like the business climate. They like the jobs that are being offered and created. And we intend to continue to do that. Now, my opponent has criticized the economic development team that we have in the state of Georgia. Which, when he does that, he criticizes your local economic development team, which you, quite frankly, have one of the best in this state. And they work very closely with our state organization. And that's what helps us bring some of these jobs that are here. We've actually had about 1,900 new jobs in your county since I became governor. And that represents a lot of capital investment that is taking place here. Of course, you're very fortunate that Gulfstream continues to grow. I think they're now at about 10,000 total employees in the state of Georgia. One of the biggest and fastest growing businesses in our state. And businesses like that want to be in a state that treats them fairly. And that's what we've done. Now, my opponent has criticized the fact that we treat businesses fairly. I don't think he likes the idea that people want to come and live here in our state. He's criticized our economic development team and said that he would do a national search to replace them because they are not qualified and they're not experienced. Let me tell you what just happened within the last 2 or 3 days. the International Economic Development Council, international by the way, who ranks states in the United States as to how their economic development teams are rated. They have given Georgia's economic development team the #1 position in the entire country. And I don't want to say it too loud because Senator Cruz might hear it, but Texas and Louisiana are tied for second. But you know, why would you want to do a national search when you already have the best? Doesn't he trust Georgians to run Georgia's businesses, especially when they're being as successful as they are? I'm running against somebody who's been a state senator for the entire time I've been your governor. During that period of time, he's never passed a single piece of legislation. Now he says, when I say that, he says, oh, but I've had my name on several bills that you've signed. Well, you know, we have a term for that in the legislative bodies of this country. It's called a backbencher. It's called somebody who sits back on the back, keeps their finger in the political winds, and when they think somebody else is going to put in the hard work and the effort that it takes to pass a piece of legislation, they say, how about letting me put my name on that too, so I might be able to claim credit for it one of these days. That's not leadership. Let me tell you another thing. He not only has not passed any legislation, he's not even been selected as a leader within his own Democrat caucus or within the DeKalb delegation, which is predominantly Democrat. He's not a position within the within the Democrat members of the body in which he serves. He's not a leader within the delegation from the entire Cobb County delegation. And speaking of Cobb County, let me give you an example of what he does. You may recall a year or so ago that the DeKalb County school system was put on probation by the accrediting agency. It was a serious concern because we had seen what happens when a county's school system loses its accreditation. Children can't get into the college they want to go to. Values of property starts to drop because parents don't want their children enrolled in a school system that's not accredited. They start leaving, property values drop, bad things begin to happen. Well, I only had one choice. It was not the best choice that any of us would have had we had options, but we had no option. I decided that I was going to remove 6 of the members of that local school board and replace them so that they could work together and achieve full accreditation again. I did that, and they achieved full accreditation once again. Well, let me tell you the story that preceded that. I met with high school students from virtually every one of the high schools in DeKalb County, and they have 100,000 students in their school system there, by the way. They were worried about losing scholarship opportunities, about other things that would be a mark on their record if their high school did not have accreditation. I invited the DeKalb County delegation. It is primarily Democrats. I invited them to stand with me when I made that announcement. We did it in the rotunda of the Capitol. We had the 3 Republicans who represented portions of DeKalb County who stood with me. We had Stacey Abrams, who is the minority leader of the Democrats in the House, stood with me. 2 other Democrats in the House stood with me. Senator Emanuel Jones from the DeKalb County Senate delegation stood with me. Guess who was not there? Senator Jason Carter. Where was he? We finally started looking for pictures to figure out where he was. He was hiding in the shadows because he was afraid that he would make a political mistake that would be costly to his future in running for other offices. Well, you know, if somebody won't stand up for the children in your own county, which you're elected to represent, what makes you think he's going to stand up for the children all across the state of Georgia? He will not. Now, he wants to talk about the bad things that are happening in Georgia. And he wants to hold me accountable for the Great Recession. As you just heard Senator Cruz say, he ought to be looking to President Obama for the policies and the practices he's put on our state and every other state in this country that has depressed our economy, and we're just working extremely hard to get out from under that depression. And we're doing good. Our state revenues are continuing to climb, and for this first year, in the 4 years I've had state budgets, we were able to put the largest amount of money into K through 12 funding that we have been able to do in 7 years. Now, Mr. Carter says he wants to be an education governor. Now, he voted for my first 3 budgets, which did have modest increases, but we were still trying to come out from under this great recession. But this year, when our policies had worked and jobs were created and more revenue was coming to the state, we decided to put even more into K through 12 funding. And guess what he did? He voted against it. Now, he's been asked, why would you vote against the largest funding for something you say is the most important thing in our future? And that's education. Well, his explanation is this. He went on a tour, and he visited some of the poorer school systems in our state. I call it his epiphany tour. And he came back and he decided he just couldn't vote for the budget. Now, he took 2 or 3 other Democrats with him. Guess what? They apparently didn't have the scales fall from their eyes, because when they came back, they voted for the budget. But he didn't. He was one of only 5 individuals in the Georgia Senate, all Democrats, who voted against the budget. Over 2/3 of the Democrats in the Senate where he serves voted contrary to him. Every one of the Democrats in the House of Representatives voted for the budget. Now, what is the significance of that? He is in a very extreme minority, even within the Democrat Party. He does not even represent mainstream Democrats. Folks, if that's his position, which he has now publicly put in print by voting against this budget, I think we all have very serious reasons to be concerned about his ever getting control of state government. He'll take us back. We've come too far. We've worked too hard. It's time to keep going. Now, we're excited about the prospects of Election Day. And there are several others who are candidates that are going to be on the ballot. I'm not sure. Some of them are going to have the opportunity to speak today. But while I'm doing that, let me just say on their behalf, please don't forget about our other Republicans who are on the ballot. Both those at the congressional levels, and I know I've seen 2 of our congressional candidates here today. Don't forget about our constitutional officers. 4 years ago, when I was elected, we took every constitutional office in the state of Georgia for the Republican Party. And they're all up for election. And I ask for your support for them as well. I think part of the strategy of the other party is they hope you'll forget about those that are down ballot races. Please don't do that. We cannot afford to have that happen. We have a great team working on behalf of the citizens of our state, and I want us to continue to have that going forward. I appreciate David Perdue, who is here, and he'll speak to you in just a few minutes. He's going to be a great candidate, and he is going to be a great senator. I know that my good friend Johnny Isaacson represents us all very well, and he is certainly a great spokesman for our state. He needs a good partner working with him. He does not need a partner who's going to be going in the opposite direction from the way he's trying to lead this country. And I feel David will do a great job of being his partner. In conclusion, though, let me just say to Jack Kingston, he's been a great friend of mine. We knew each other back years ago when we were both in the Georgia General Assembly. He was in the House and I was in the Senate. I got to know him then. We both went to Washington at the same time in the 1992 election cycle. And we were friends for all those years. And when I left Jack there. And he rose to positions of power and responsibility. And he represented your interest, and he represented the interest of this state and the interest of the people of this country very, very well. Jack, Thank you publicly for your service.
Nathan, thank you very much. Nathan, thank you. We appreciate you being here today. And, you know, ladies and gentlemen, this is a good old-fashioned political barbecue. It's an opportunity to hear the candidates, meet the candidates, and get the unfiltered information. And we've got one more, the guest speaker of the day, the man of the hour, and that's David Perdue. I want to say this. People have said to me, well, you're doing something for David Perdue. And I say, you know what? It is a little awkward. Me having gone to the University of Georgia and him going to some trade school in Atlanta that nobody's ever heard of. But we have looked well past that. David and I got to know each other over the last 18 months very closely. And what we found so many times on the campaign trail is before one of our 20 or 30 different debates, he and I would get in the corner and we would start laughing and talking. And we'd also come up with very similar ideas. David Perdue is pro-military. David Perdue. David Perdue is pro-agriculture. David Perdue is pro-jobs. We've worked very closely on expansion of the port, and I can tell you the impact that's going to have in Chatham County, particularly West Chatham County, in this specific area, is going to be profound, and the benefit of that is going to be felt for many, many years to come. But one of the things that Libby and I like about Bonnie and David, among everything else, is that they are family folks. He's a grandfather. I told the story the other night, David, and I'm going to tell it one more time, but about 2 weeks ago, he got off the campaign trail. Took a day off in the heat of the battle. Where was David Perdue? He was at his 4-year-old grandson's birthday in New York. Ladies and gentlemen, anybody has those kind of priorities we need in the U.S. Senate. Ladies and gentlemen, David Perdue.
Hey, God bless you, Jack. Hey, give it up for Jack Kingston. The only thing worse than having to follow Jack Kingston and talking to people like you is I had to go behind Jim one night, his son. I got to tell you, Jim's a better speaker than Jack or me put together. I mean, it's incredible. I just want to personally thank Jack. You don't know this yet. You may not have seen it yet, but Jack came up with a 30-second ad that'll be up all next week to support me. And I have to tell you how humbling that is. I want to thank Jack personally for that. Jack. You know, the only awkward thing about this is Georgia Tech's only won one game in the last 12 years, y'all. Yeah, I went to Tech. I'm proud of it, but I know how to say go dogs now. Can't get the bark out, but I'm working on it. Hey, in all seriousness, thank y'all. Pete, Rita, thank you guys for hosting this. This is what this is all about. This is where we take our country back right now. Michelle Nunn wants to be Barack Obama's senator. I want to be yours. 70% of us in America, not just Republicans, 70% believe our country's going in the wrong direction. That's why Bonnie and I got in this race. By any measure, foreign policy, immigration, education, health care, the debt, the economy, this president is failures. I think he's checked out. He's played over 200 rounds of golf. While we have men and women dying overseas, we have a Marine still not back from Mexico, y'all. One phone call, that young man would be back with his mama. But more importantly than that, y'all, it's the results. This president is overseeing one of the biggest failures in American history in terms of being president. If you look at the results right now, we have fewer people working than any time since Jimmy Carter was president. Middle-class incomes have dropped like a rock. And maybe worst of all, in the last 6 years, we've allowed 4 million women to fall into poverty. And they brag about all these jobs they're creating. Well, the jobs they're creating are part-time jobs, a majority of jobs. And I can tell you, Obamacare is the most insidious law in our time. Let me tell you a little story. You can't make this up. I was in a meeting the other day in Griffin, Georgia, 2 days ago. And this guy came up to me afterward. He said, David, I need to tell you my story. I have 2 daughters. I'm a pastor. I don't make a lot of money, but my wife works, and we lost our insurance. We were canceled under Obamacare. Now we have Obamacare, and my premium went from $648 a month to over $1,200 a month. I don't know how to do that. I can't afford that. I got more money going out than I got coming in. Y'all, I hear that all over the state. A little 13-year-old asked me to sign her insulin pump 2 nights ago. I did that. One of the trackers got that on film. He said, David Perdue signs the abdomen of a young woman. Her mother, her father's a pastor. Her mother works. They got canceled in Obamacare. They now have Obamacare. And her cost went up $6,000 a year to take care of that type 1 diabetic 13-year-old. That's unconscionable, guys. More than that, every 3 months they have to go to a bureaucrat and recertify that their daughter still has type 1 diabetes. I'm not a doctor, but you never get cured from type 1 diabetes, I'm told. Why do you have to go recertify? We live in a state, we're very blessed to have a governor that focuses on jobs and economic growth. This is the #1 place in the country to do business. And yet, because of the federal government, we're held back in so many ways. And you feel it out when you're talking to people. We have to just face up to the fact this is a failed administration, and Michelle Nunn will be nothing but a rubber stamp for Barack Obama. And Harry. Now, I know who it is. I call him Harry. Harry and Barry. How about that? Harry and Barry are leading us down the road. You realize, as Senator Cruz said, wasn't it great to have Senator Cruz here today? Seriously. Woo-hoo! But here's the problem with where we are. Republicans have President Obama because we didn't get out and vote in 2012. That's a fact. We cannot let that happen in 2014. They're coming down here with their billions of dollars and their liberal viewpoints, and they're trying to steal this race in Georgia, and we're not going to let them do it, right? How are we going to do that? We're going to get the vote out. But here's how else we're going to do it. We've been talking about not just the problems in Washington, we're talking about hope. We deserve better than we're getting right now out of our federal government. It's broken. It's not working. But let me just give you some hope. It's not that hard to get our economy going. We've got $2 trillion trapped overseas because of bad tax policy. That's not a partisan issue. We can change that. Somebody said the other day, do you think you can get some Democrats? Yeah, I know I can get some Democrats. I want to make sure I get all the Republicans. We can do this. It's not that hard. Look, if we can put a man on the moon in 10 years, why can't we solve this debt crisis? If we can put the world on our iPhones, why can't we get our kids educated? And if we can bring down the Soviet Union with the strength of our economy and the power of our ideas, why can't we get America working again? Well, we can, but not by following the failed policies of this administration, and that's exactly what you'll get with Michelle Nunn. President Obama said last week that his policies, every single one of them, are on the ballot in this race in Georgia. That wasn't good enough. This week he came down and got on an Atlanta radio station and said, you've got to elect Michelle Nunn so she can come to Washington and help me continue doing my good work. Are we going to let that happen? Are we? With your help and God's blessing, Bonnie and I are doing everything we can to make sure Harry Reid does not have one more vote in the United States Senate. Thank you, guys. God bless you.
David, great job. Ladies and gentlemen, David Perdue, our next U.S. Senator. We are going to make sure that we all vote and get all of your friends to vote who aren't here. David, you and Bonnie come back up here. I got a couple of quick thank yous, and I wanted to get all the Republican candidates and your spouses back on stage. But some of them are listening, and some of them are acting like Democrats. But that's okay. A couple of quick thank yous I want to say. Debbie Rowers with the Republican Women, great supporter who helped with this event. Liz and Marilyn Overton, thank you for all your help. Lisa Kennemore, Minority Outreach, thank you for coming down from Atlanta. Ruby Robinson, 1st District of Georgia, thank you for everything. Tom Sharp, Skidaway Island Republican Club, Bill Fowler, and one other person I want to get him up here on stage. He's done so much for me, my family, my children, and the Republican Party. Ladies and gentlemen, Catfish, Kevin Jackson. Come up here, Kevin. There hadn't been anybody running for office that hadn't come to see Kevin. Now, Kevin was a co-captain with Herschel Walker at the University of Georgia. Kevin, you want to say inspirational remark? You got 3 seconds, but you can get the job done.
I just want to say we need to give a big hand for Jack Kingston. We know what he's done for this 1st District. Everybody here is represented proud. He's one of the idols in my life, Ert Russell, Vince Dooley, and Jack Kingston. I can't say enough about his family and what Jack's done for us, the military. But hey, it's a new time, and we have got to get people out to vote. I mean, I get so tired of people talking about the country when 8% of the people only turn out. So call your friends, people that own companies. We got them right here. Buddy, David, Nathan, let's go. And let's get out and let's be strong. And that's all. Thank you very much.
Good man, Kevin. Thank you very much. Still not going to do it. I've got to get my family. I've got to get the family up here. And let me just say this, ladies and gentlemen. David, come up here. Johnny, Ted Cruz, come up here. Buddy, y'all squeeze in real quickly. And just, Governor, close ranks. Come on. Everybody come on in and squeeze in. And I just want to say, on behalf of the, come on in. I don't know where my family is. Libby, are you coming up? Libby, I see my sister-in-law, Rebecca. My family doesn't listen to me at all, so it's no big deal of that. But I'm trying to get them. I don't know where, does Manley make it up here? Ladies and gentlemen, we've got to get this thing done. We've got to finish the job. We've got to rebuild the state of Georgia, the United States of America, not just for us, but for our grandchildren. Thank you very much for being here today. Thank you for your support of these candidates, and God bless America.
Doing what we do, man. Doing what we do.
How are you, sir? Good. Let everybody in Georgia know what you feel is the most important issue of the day today.
Obamacare.
Obamacare.
Amen. Let's get rid of it. Let's jerk it out by the roots.
Amen.
Hey, guys, how are you?
Trying to get